So the first thing I want to address is this idea of like, I'm just too young / this isn't fair. Really not a question of age, because everybody faces different challenges at different times in their lives. And I'm going to touch on something that is maybe controversial. I want you to listen through both sections of this. So no matter what you believe about who you are and how you came to be here, you have this opportunity to switch your perspective a little bit, into a more productive perspective. Okay, so if you have chronic hip pain, back pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, knee pain, foot pain, and you're under the age of like 35, you may have said to yourself, I'm too young to feel like this. And if that's where you're at, this video is for you. I have personally also been in that space. I started having massive problems with my body very early on. Even as early as 15, I had some issues with my groin from playing ice hockey. I had a pretty bad back injury when I was 16, just playing around at the beach. And in my 20s, I was a total wreck. So I want to speak today to people out there who are younger. You're in your teens, maybe you're in your 20s, and you feel like, wow, my body is broken. That must mean I'm broken. That must mean I'm going to be screwed for the rest of my life. So today, please listen up to what I have to tell you. This is going to be mostly unscripted. I have some notes that I want to get across to you because they're hugely important to how you live the remainder of your life. So the first thing that you need to know is that it's super normal to feel desperate and depressed when your body feels like it's broken. You're having something massive taken away from you, and when you're young and you're seeing other people just go about their lives, they're your same age and you don't have the same, and they don't have the same problems, it can feel horrible, and that is normal. However, it is not a good idea to stay in that mental space because it will not get you anywhere, and it is very likely to make things worse. So one of the common things that I thought, and I also have seen in comments on my videos from younger people, is this idea of like, well, I'm just too young to feel like this. Man, I must be messed up. Or man, I must need some sort of really drastic outside intervention. For me, that showed up as wanting or considering surgery to fix stuff that was going on with my hands. So thoracic outlet syndrome. I was getting terrible symptoms into my hands and wrists when I think it was 19 roughly. And, I was thinking like, wow, do I need surgery for that? My right shoulder was all messed up. It kept getting out of whack. I thought maybe I might need to get surgery for that. My hips, when I was in my early to mid 20s, were really bad. My mid 20s, they were pretty darn bad. And I remember thinking like, well, am I going to need hip surgery to fix this, right? And so these are the types of thoughts that get into your head because you're like, well, I'm so young, I'm in so much pain, things are bad. Things are obviously bad, and I need drastic help. So the other way this shows up is you might think, because I'm too young, this just isn't fair. I'm only in my 20s. This isn't fair. How come nobody else feels like I feel? And all of these thoughts, again, are normal, but they are not going to help you get out of this, in my opinion and in my experience. So the first thing I want to address is this idea of like, I'm just too young / this isn't fair. You have to realize that you are given lessons to learn in life, and you don't get to choose when you learn those lessons. There are challenges that show up, and you either meet those challenges head on, or you try to ignore them or get around them, fight them, pretend they're not there. And in that case, those problems probably get worse. So it's really not a question of age, because everybody faces different challenges at different times in their lives. Maybe, you started dating earlier and being able to socialize with members of the opposite sex or members of the same sex, whoever you're attracted to, either it came really easy to you or it was really hard for you, right? And maybe at 16, you were super popular and you were dating all the girls, or maybe you were more like me and you were really, really socially awkward and didn't know how to talk to even other humans, right? So whatever it is, you're going to have different challenges, and you either know how to deal with them easily or you don't. You can put off dealing with those challenges, but then those challenges remain. And so when you're thinking about something like chronic pain, shoulder, hip pain, back pain, and you're only 17, you're only 18, and you're thinking like, it's just not fair for me to have that, that's fine. A lot of things are not fair. That's the reality. A lot of things happen when they happen. So it's more productive, I find, to think about it as, this challenge is here. What am I going to learn? What is the lesson I need to learn? How am I going to solve this? Rather than attempting to blame somebody else, ruminate over how not fair this is, or really catastrophize. And catastrophizing is where we get into this next bit, right? So you're thinking, all right, I have this pain. Maybe I can deal with this, but maybe because I'm in such pain, the problem is there's something really, really, really wrong with me, and I need somebody else to just get in there, cut it, fix it, jam in there, get the hammer, get the nails, get the screw, and fix this and make it like new. And I'm going to touch on this a little more in detail later in this video, but I want you to just think right now about what it takes to create a human joint that works correctly. How easy is it to replicate a shoulder joint and the movements of the shoulder joint? How easy is it to replicate the normal smooth function of a hip joint, of an elbow, of a wrist, of all these fingers? It's not easy. And once you get in there to start messing around with how everything's connected, it is highly unlikely you can create an exact replica of what was once there. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Okay. So before we get there, I want to talk about this mindset shift that I've already touched on a little bit more in detail. The sooner you start thinking about the challenges that you're facing right now as lessons that you need to learn, the more you're going to gain in terms of your short-term and long-term quality of life. And because you're younger, you're actually at a big advantage versus older people who might be experiencing the same level of pain, the same kinds of symptoms. So I want you to think about that. Maybe it'll help you think about it as it's actually more fair. Things are more in your favor because you're younger. Because you are younger, you have a much better chance of learning important lessons that fix your pain and even succeeding in getting rid of that pain completely on your own and understanding how to maintain that healthy balance throughout your body for decades to come. Now, the reason I say it's more in your favor, it's kind of unfair to older people, speaking as now an older person. When you're in your 20s, when you're in your teens, you actually have all the cards stacked in your favor to recover, to get better, to be stronger and more flexible. Why, you might ask? Well, because number one, you have more energy and free time because you are younger. Especially in your teens, the number of responsibilities you have, it's tiny, right? You don't have people counting on you. You probably don't pay rent. Maybe you pay rent. When you're in your 20s, you got some bills, you got some things you're trying to take care of, but you actually have free time. You probably don't have kids unless maybe you had kids early. But if you are younger, no matter what, biologically speaking, your body is it's so much easier for you to change your muscles, to build them, to train them to be more flexible, to train them to be stronger, to make muscle grow wherever you want it to grow. So that is a huge advantage over anybody who is older than you. Somebody in their 40s like me, it's going to be a little bit harder. Somebody in their 50s whose shoulder hurts, it's a little bit harder to undo decades of poor habits and lack of usage and atrophy and just a lack of connection to the body. But because you're younger, you have the advantage, okay? And finally, I mentioned this a second ago, but the return on investment for you is huge, because when you learn how to fix your body in your teens and 20s or your early 30s, you still have decades left in your life. And the lessons you learn fixing your knee or fixing your hip or fixing your back, those lessons carry all over your body, and it's going to affect how you live your life. And it's going to mean that as you get older, you're going to know how to maintain the health and the comfort and the strength and flexibility of your body in the long run. So you can look at the challenge you're facing right now as, oh, this is unfair because I'm hurting so much and nobody else is hurting. But I would also invite you to view it as, this is unfair to everybody else because I'm getting to learn this lesson now, and I'm going to benefit from this for decades into the future. And I know that might sound like some sort of optimistic mumbo jumbo, but I have personally lived it. My teens and 20s were just racked with physical pain, and having gone through all that and learning how to restore balance to my body means that now, as I'm in my 40s and things, of course, still want to get out of whack because I'm sitting at a desk, sitting at a computer, editing videos, whatever. When my body is starting to get out of whack, I understand, oh, I have the power here to figure out what's going on so that my body stays functional, it stays comfortable, it stays mobile, and I can stay productive and engaged with my life. I don't have to just roll up into a helpless ball and lie in bed all day and cry about how I'm not able to do what I used to be able to do, because I know how to maintain the things that I want. And as long as I have the discipline to train for those things, my body continues to work the way I want it to. So it's unfair that you're getting pain now when you're young, but it's also unfair because you're going to benefit hugely. Now, let's say you're hearing all this and you're inspired and you're like, okay, let me tackle this. Good. So here's some advice for you so that you can make progress. Number one, you just need to make this decision. You have to choose whether you want to wither or you want to grow, right? Do you want to just say like, that's it, and then start falling apart? Or do you want to actually grow, get better? Be clear about that. Because if you are deciding to do nothing, to just hope that things get better, you are making an active decision to wither, in my opinion. Because sitting on your hands and hoping that the pain goes away, it's not generally a recipe for success. If you're very lucky, it'll work a few times, and then eventually the problem surfaces in a deeper way or in a multifaceted way. You know, instead of just your low back, now you start feeling the hip or the knee. It starts spreading because you're not addressing the underlying issue. All right, so if you choose to grow, then you need to set in some specific strategies. But then number two is set up the structures to grow. So you need to set aside time to do things that you are probably resistant to doing. So you probably don't like the idea of having to exercise regularly. You probably don't like the idea of having to do a specific kind of exercise regularly. For some people, it might be stretching that you don't want to do because you just want to lift weights. For other people, it might be you don't want to lift weights because you just like stretching. For some people, it might be I don't want to walk like that. I know I personally often have resistance to just going out for walks and hikes. I usually want to be on a board or bicycle or on wheels or something that glides like a surfboard. But sometimes it's important to do the thing that challenges your body in a way that you're kind of resistant to. And you need to set structure to that so that you don't just kind of let it slide and not do it, right? You have to do things that make you uncomfortable in order to grow. That's it. That is the reality. Think about how you got into the situation you're in, right? If you're playing the same sport, you're doing the same motions all the time, that is a recipe for getting your body all locked up. If I told you, you know what, all I'm going to do is sit in this position with my arms crossed like this for the next year with my shoulders shrugged, and I'm just going to tilt my head to the right like this, you wouldn't tell me that's a good idea. You'd say, don't you think that might cause some problems? And I'd say, no, I know better than you. And I would be wrong, right? Because we all know, just intuitively, we understand, just like, you know, the old mom wagging her finger thing, right? Of like, if you keep making that face, your face is going to get stuck like that, right? We kind of joke about that as being like, obviously not true. That's all silly. But in some ways it is true, right? Like if all you do is just hold a certain position, the muscles do learn to hold that position pretty well. That doesn't mean it's permanent though, right? Like if I just make this face all day long, it's not going to be totally permanent, right? I could eventually get out of that. But if I did this for a whole year, it would be really tough to loosen things up and restore that motion, right? If you were lying in bed for a whole year and it was time to get up and go for a sprint, you wouldn't be able to do it because your muscles would not know how to do it. Your brain wouldn't know what signals to send. Your muscles wouldn't even know how to exert enough force to move your bones. Likewise, if I'm just holding my arms like this all year and I'm always twisted like this, what's going to happen is when I need to get out of that position, it's going to be tough. I'm going to have to like relearn how to turn my head and neck. I might hurt things. Muscles might really complain when we go back into a different position. So everything that you have done in your life to this point, in your young life to this point, has led you to this situation where muscles are having trouble moving your body, positioning your body in a comfortable way in all of the positions that you're trying to access. So your job is to figure out what muscles need to be trained and in what way in order to make those new positions or these very natural positions possible again. That means you can't get stuck in the idea that you are deformed in some way. When a well-intentioned health professional says, well, you know what, your bones are just misshapen and it's just not good for you to try, you are talking with somebody who likely is perpetuating the physically feeble fallacy, or PFF, or PF for short. This is basically when somebody who doesn't know how to help you, who cannot conceive of a way to help you, wants to convince you and themselves that the only course of action is no course of action because it is hopeless. However, this is usually couched in scientific mumbo jumbo or scientific sounding mumbo jumbo, like, oh, you have 1 millimeter of growth, or this is structurally whatever, blah, you were born congenitally bad, your bones are misshapen, whatever. When you look through the history of these types of orthopedic explanations for movement issues, you'll find that the overwhelming majority are nothing but bunk. So don't get caught up in those. You need to learn how to use your body. So again, we're going to block time to learn your exercise time, your stretching time, your weightlifting time. This is learning time. This is time for you to understand how your body works. Above all else, you need to be moving. You need to be exploring different modes of movement, different positions that you are not used to. For some people, this might mean dance. For some people, this might mean just taking a Feldenkrais class. For some people, this might mean trying a different sport or playing the same sport, but with a different hand. For some people, this is going to be weightlifting. This is going to be powerlifting. For some people, this might be using some dumbbells, but not really going too crazy. For some people, this might be doing yoga. You need to figure out what your body has gotten really good at, and then you need to expand your horizons, expand your options. You also need to spend time learning, okay? Just actually learning. This doesn't mean I want you to spend 3 hours on YouTube watching videos of me or some other experts. And this definitely does not mean spending all your time researching on the internet to try to find the magic answer on blog posts and articles or asking ChatGPT, because the more time you're spending sitting on your butt, the less time you're actually moving and engaging your muscles. So if you want to engage your brain to kind of understand some different topics, that's fine, but you have to limit the amount of time you're just engaging this and just trying to learn and use your intellect to try to solve the problem. Ultimately, you have to come back to using the body in order to make the body more comfortable and more strong. So in all this, we're going to go back to that idea of how your body is made. And I'm going to touch on something that is maybe controversial. The point is, I want you to listen through both sections of this. So no matter what you believe about who you are and how you came to be here, you have this opportunity to switch your perspective a little bit, into a more productive perspective. Okay, so I'm going to assume for this first section that you believe in evolution. I'm going to assume that you are a secular person, you have no religious beliefs whatsoever, or maybe you're like vaguely spiritual. Okay, so ask yourself, is it likely that millions of years of evolution have created a human body that is going to feel its best when it is sedentary and in the same position for 80 to 90% of the day? In other words, sitting like this. Is it likely, given the grand scope of human history, that your body is designed in some way to feel good when it's not exerting itself, when it's constantly just doing this or this? Or is it more likely that your body is actually supposed to be in movement and that it feels its best when moving on a regular basis? Because if you believe that the human animal across millions of years evolved in an environment where it was constantly having to seek food, water, shelter, then it seems highly, 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 highly unlikely that this new modern environment in which the human animal is just locked into the same position for most of the day, if not the entire day, it's highly unlikely that the human animal is going to feel good in this environment. And this is a very new modern environment for the human animal. Just imagine what would happen if you took a wolf that's used to roaming around, hunting, whatever, and you put it into a 5-foot by 5-foot room with a 6-foot ceiling with no sunlight. You gave it all the food and water it needs. Is that going to be a healthy wolf? Do you think that wolf will be at its peak wolfness? Will it have happy wolf thoughts? Likewise, if you did this even with a squirrel, little squirrel, you put it into a 5-foot by 5-foot by 6-foot, 5-foot, doesn't matter, ceiling, I don't care. No, let's lower it. It's a small squirrel. Let's lower it to 3 feet into a small little room. This little squirrel that's used to jumping around in trees and gathering nuts and whatever. What will be the consequence for that squirrel's physical and mental health? Do you think it's likely that that squirrel is going to feel its squirrely best? Of course not. So a human, if you believe that it has evolved over millions of years in the same way that all these other animals have evolved, then you need to realize that the environment that you're sticking yourself in is unlikely to produce the happy human that you want to be. And that means you have to change the stimuli. You have to allow the human body to move. You have to be engaged physically in ways that you probably aren't, frankly, in modern life. If you're in your teens or even in your 20s, maybe you're still in school and you're spending most of your day stuck at a desk. And then the time you're not stuck at a desk, are you stuck in front of a computer? So you're literally doing the same things. Your room is tiny. It's even smaller than 5 by 5. You're in this 1 square foot of space that your butt is on this little patch, and that's it. And your feet are on that little patch, and then you're locked in doing this stuff. That is not a recipe for a happy, healthy, functioning human being. It's just not. You choose what you want to believe, but I want you to think about this. Does it make sense for a human animal to feel good in this new environment, or does it make sense that you need to change the environment in order to ensure that the human feels healthy and happy? Now, that's for all the secularists out there who are not religious in any way. Now, let's talk about, what if you don't believe in evolution? Fine, I don't care what you believe. If you think God created humans in the Christian tradition in his own image, do you think that God gave you this body because it's meant to sit still all the time? Because when you look at other animals, when you look at birds, say, they have these wings that can flap and they can fly, they do everything they want, they can go anywhere. You look at the squirrels, they have these strong legs. You look at rabbits, they can jump and burrow and do all these things. Dogs have these bodies that can just dig and run and sprint, and they can leap. Cats can just jump so high up over fences and get into our garden and ruin all the things in the garden and sometimes poop in the wood chips. They can do all these things. Do you believe that the human body, which has so much range of motion available, which gets 360 degrees of motion at the shoulder, at the hip, that can move the spine in so many ways. We have these glutes. These glutes allow us to stand and walk on 2 feet. We can manipulate so many objects, even ideas. We're able to do all these things. Do you think that God's intention was for your body to sit in this little 1 foot by 1 foot spot that your butt occupies on your computer chair or your couch? If you do believe that, then that's your choice, and maybe that is what your body is optimized for, but I doubt it. But you kind of have to decide. The birds have wings to fly, the fish have fins to swim. You've got all this stuff. Do you think God intended for you to not use these arms and legs to meet all the challenges that you encounter in life? Do you think God just wanted you to sit still on the couch? Maybe that's why he gave us TV and the internet. I don't know. You have to answer that question for yourself. But I will submit that the more likely answer, and I don't claim to know the will of God, but I would wager to say that it's more likely that your very existence, you're having all these pieces and bits and parts, that is indicative of your body being intended to move and to engage physically with the world. And just a little aside, there are the Benedictine monks, and part of their lifestyle in their monasteries is to be always actively engaged in something, right? They're working on projects, they're growing things, they're building things, they're making things, they're engaged in things, because it helps the mind and the body and the spirit to be constantly moving and active and engaged. Now that I've said that out loud, I actually probably want to go back and fact check. I forgot if it's the Benedictine or if it's a different sect of monks. But you can fact check that for me. I just read this in a book 2 weeks ago. I'm pretty sure it's Benedictine monks. If I'm wrong, please drop a comment down below and fact check that for me. In any case, whatever your beliefs, whether you are a Christian, you're a Buddhist, you're a practicer of Shintoist, whether you are a secular humanist, whether you are a rabid atheist, I don't care. Ultimately, you need to think deeply about what you think makes the most sense for the human body. Does a body that has the potential for so much movement, for so much manipulation of the environment, for so much movement through so many different kinds of environments, right? You can climb mountains with a human body. You can walk on flat ground. You can run through sand. You can jump into a lake and swim in a lake. You can jump into an ocean and swim into an ocean. You can jump off of a cliff into the ocean. Your body is able to do all these crazy things. You can create an airplane and fly through the sky. You have so many potential abilities. Does it make sense that the human body is going to feel its best when you shrink it down into doing nothing? Because that is the path. You either go into shrinking down to nothing and you rest, and hope that things get better, and they will not. Or you shoot for expanding. So if you believe, like I do, that the goal, the intention, the true function of this body is to be moving and to have more options, then you have to choose to do the work now, at your age now, regardless of how unfair it may seem. And I'll tell you this, I can promise you that if you engage with the process, it is absolutely worth the effort. If you choose not to, a different payoff comes. But if you keep trying to expand your options, expand your body, expand it to do more things, there's a huge payoff, and you will reap the rewards year after year, decade after decade. And I think that is the most important thing to keep in mind. When I look back at the trajectory of my life, and I'm not even that old, I'm 43 right now. And when I look back at the trajectory and see how much pain I was in my mid-teens, my late teens, my early, and then even my mid-20s, things were just so bad. But I look back at all of the things I learned through those painful experiences. I'm grateful, honestly, for them. I often close my videos, every time actually, close my videos saying pain sucks, life shouldn't. And I do believe that's true, but I do also believe that pain teaches, and it teaches very important lessons. So even if you're not feeling ready to learn the lesson that some kind of pain is there to teach you, the fact that it's there, in my opinion, shows that it is time to learn the lesson. And the sooner you accept that there's a lesson to learn, the sooner you engage in learning that lesson, the happier, the healthier you will be, the sooner that happiness and healthiness will come. So I hope if you're out there, you're hearing this message, that it helps you find the motivation and it helps you make the choices that help your body feel good and that help you heal as a human. If you need help in this process, I'll have links in the description box. I invite you to go to uprighthealth.com/BRB. That's my free, absolutely free body rebuilding basics program. It covers so many important details and so many important fundamental ideas and strategies to help you feel better in your body. That's at uprighthealth.com/BRB. Check it out. There will be a link in the description box. Thanks so much for your time and your attention, and your body will thank you too as you give it time and attention. I hope you always remember that pain sucks, life shouldn't.